again. Sweet. Okay. Almost.
I guess I should put a sign out, but get the door open so I was too worried.
It's all good.
Okay.
Is there somebody out there watching just in case somebody else pops in?
No, because Mike's off because I approved his
Oh,
leave
okay.
time.
That's right.
Oops. I forgot.
All right, it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
All right, everybody ready to go? Just making sure you all are up and running. Thank you so much for coming. My name's Matt Bruning. I'm the press secretary at the Ohio Department of Transportation. I guess, first of all, with tomorrow being Thanksgiving, it is kind of fitting that I first say thank you to all of you in the media. We've had a lot of information we've needed to get out to the public, and obviously we've done that through our website, transportation.ohio.gov/471-FIRE. We've done it through our social media outlets as well, but most importantly, we've done it through you, and you have been very instrumental in getting that information out to the public, so we really, really appreciate all of you doing that. I know there are a couple of questions that are really kind of on everybody's minds, rightfully so. One of the top questions has been, so when are you going to get everything back open? And I will, of course, let my colleague Kathleen Fuller answer that, but first I want to make this point. We understand that this has been a major inconvenience and frustration to a lot of people, tens of thousands of people who cross the Ohio River every day. These people cross the river to go to work, to go to entertainment, to conduct business, visit the wonderful attractions we have in the tri-state on both sides of the river, access health care, all those things, very important. And we know this has been a very heavy burden to all of them. We've been working tirelessly behind the scenes to get this roadway reopened. We know it's very important. I would like to, of course, thank our emergency contractor, Great Lakes Construction. They have been working literally around the clock. We're talking hundreds of people working from about 25 different companies that are trying to do all the different elements of this project, the design, the engineering, all of the things that will make this happen. So we certainly appreciate all of their work, and I hope you do as well. So Kathleen Fuller is our District 8 Public Information Officer. I know many of you have talked to her many, many times over the course of this situation, and she will now walk you through kind of how we got here and what is next in the process of getting I-471 fully reopened again.
Thank you, Matt, and good morning. Yes, I also want to reiterate a couple of things Matt said. Thank you so much for being here today. I know I've probably spoken to every one of you on at least once, but probably on multiple occasions about the situation. So I really appreciate you working with us, taking the time to ask those questions, being patient for responses, and of course your understanding of the complexities of this project. In my 24-plus years with ODOT, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen us, weather several storms through emergencies. None quite like this. Nothing quite with this much impact as we've had with this one. And, I can say that I've seen us move, I won't say mountains, but perhaps houses in some of our emergencies. And I'm going to tell you that in the last 3 weeks, we have accomplished a great deal to move this project forward. And in a traditional project, the nature in which we would remove a deck and replace steel girders, we'd be looking about 3 years to do something like this from start to finish. So to think, of all that we've already accomplished in the last 3 weeks is significant and it's monumental. Hundreds of people from more than 24 companies have been working around the clock with ODOT to design demolition and repair, finding materials, working to ensure the stability of the bridge so that we can reopen it in the safest and fastest manner possible. So we've got several slides. I'm going to walk you through kind of a little bit of a history, so to speak, of where we've gone through the last 3 weeks. So if you will, just indulge with me for a few minutes. So in the first slides, you're going to see, the first couple of slides, you're going to see some of our photos from ground level and snooper inspections that were conducted on day one. The team of structural engineers and inspectors determined very quickly that the bridge was not stable. We used drones, a robot dog to capture additional images that would be used in mapping the damage and collecting measurements while plans were being developed for shoring towers to be installed so that up-close, hands-on inspections could be conducted. If you want to show them the next slide. This is one, if you look at this and if you see the profile of this, you can see, if you can look very closely, you can see the amount of damage that they were able to see day one. And if you look at that, you can tell just how severe that is. That tells you just how unstable this structure is. So, Matt, I think you can probably, and there's a couple of side shots of the girders that you can see the bent, how things are warped and bent. So obviously, this fire produced a significant amount of heat to be able to cause this damage. All right, great, thank you. So with the structure being unstable, and it was, we realized it was too dangerous to put people above or below the bridge to conduct a full inspection or to begin any sort of restoration work. So shoring towers would need to be installed to stabilize the approach spans in order to conduct the necessary inspections to determine the full extent of damage and the repairs. Prior to the installation of shoring towers, a footer would need to be poured. The concrete foundation measured 65 feet by 15 feet and 3 feet thick, and it required about 15 truckloads of concrete to complete. That concrete was poured on November 8th, and of course it took 3 days, 72 hours, for it to cure before the towers could be installed. So the first round of 6 shoring towers were installed during the week of November 11th, and those are, of course, being used to stabilize that north span, span number 4, and that allowed for those hands-on, up-close inspections to take place, which they did on Friday of that week as well as on Saturday. So our structural engineers and our team of inspectors were out there back-to-back days, long hours, both days, conducting those inspections and gathering materials that they could send off for some sampling for testing to really understand the extent of damage and how much would be required to repair the structure. Let's see what. Yes, here we've got some additional photos that show you the concrete, the footer that was being installed, and of course crews installing one of the shoring towers. So again, while those towers were going up and inspections were being conducted, at the same time, ODOT and its contractors, Great Lakes Construction, were working on the demolition plans. And go ahead and flip to the next slide. So, demolition of the damaged section of highway is not typical. This is an atypical, not a standard type of demolition. Crews can't simply just go in and saw cut the concrete bridge deck and remove the damaged concrete and then cut the damaged steel beams and remove them, which would be a standard demolition. So we had to develop very specialized, detailed plans. Several of the steel beams were deformed, as you've already seen some of those photos, and those beams had detached from the concrete bridge deck. There was no support, basically. The bridge deck had completely warped in this area. So again, no stabilization, no support for the deck on top of those girders. So for those reasons, we simply just couldn't start dismantling the damaged portion of the bridge. That just wasn't going to happen. And we knew that we needed this detailed demo plan. So for the last couple of weeks, that is what our crews, our folks have been working on. The plan for removing just the concrete deck details everything from where the cuts should be made to where equipment will be placed and how to safely offload the weight from that warped deck. This will be a very systematic approach to demolition, and some of you will hear us use the term surgical. It's going to be like a surgical, very systematic approach. So we're not going to see things come down and lower down in one fell swoop, is a term I like to use. It's not going to just be lowered very quickly. It will be cut. There will be different segments cut at different areas, all right? So the way they will do it actually will be drilling and kind of pecking holes into it and to break it up into smaller pieces where those girders are the most severely damaged, and they will remove the smaller segments and then work toward bigger segments. And they won't be working all in one place. It'll be kind of scattered around as they do this. I think, let's see. Yes. So, and of course, we have to be very careful. We have to be mindful because we don't know how the rest of the structure is going to react as we start removing that deck. So, and as well as the beams. So we have to be very careful not having a deck that's supported, having these compromised beams. We have to be very careful. And that is one of the reasons why we did install the additional 3 shoring towers this week on the south span, which would be span 3. We installed those to give us additional stability. So one of the things we've talked about too is that we've had to have a separate demolition plan, not just for the deck, but also for the girders. And because it's both of these are going to be very detailed and complex. And I know in one of our releases we put out that just for the concrete deck alone, that plan was more than 200 pages. And I'm going to tell you, I haven't read it all, so don't ask me a lot of questions about that. But it is highly detailed. And again, going back to what I said in the beginning, 3 years to do a project like this, and we've accomplished this plan and this design in just a matter of a couple of weeks. Demolition does begin this Friday, and it will take approximately 3 weeks to get through. All right, so once I think we can flip to the next slide, yes. All right, so demolition takes about 3 weeks, so probably middle of December we should have the concrete deck and the girders down. And then once that is completed, crews will repair the wall, the parapet wall along the left side of the northbound I-471 bridge, which we've had the single lane restriction in place since the closure of southbound I-471. So with that, once we get the repairs made to the parapet wall, we will have that completed hopefully by the end of December, and at that time we can reopen that single lane closure on northbound 471.
Ready for the next slide?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you. I can't see my slides. I have to go off my notes here, so I'd then have to look. Apologize. Okay, so while they've been working on the demolition plan, we've got one lane, pardon the pun, one lane working on the demolition plan. We also have another lane of folks working on the design for the repairs. And that is, where we've been, where a lot of people have been asking us about that timeline. We haven't had that demolition plan, or excuse me, that repair plan fully implemented yet. And again, the repair plan itself, very complex and very detailed. The design of this bridge is unique. These are customized girders on the structure, and so we're not looking at off-the-shelf materials that we can simply order from a supply catalog. I know I've used that term. I've talked to several of you about that already. So you're going to hear us repeat that a few times probably. But again, these steel plates that make up the girders must first be ordered from a steel mill and then shipped to a fabrication shop. Hundreds of steel plates will then be welded together to form the girders needed for repair. And the repairs will also require custom-made bearings and expansion joints. So again, not off-the-shelf, big box store kind of construction. Everything has to be custom-made to make these repairs. And so over the last couple of weeks, ODOT and Great Lakes Construction have been working with numerous girder manufacturers who operate more than 20 fabrication shops to determine the shortest timeline for us. However, bear in mind, there is a high demand for steel beams and girders due to the infrastructure work that has been taking place in North Carolina and Tennessee since Hurricane Helene this fall. So not only are we in competition with that, we're also in competition with all the construction projects around the country where these companies have already been, contracted with various DOTs from around the country, various agencies to fabricate their materials. So we are in competition for materials. Makes it very, very challenging. So to get our order process. This week, we were able to contract with Stoop Bridge, who will fabricate the girders in their Bowling Green, Kentucky facility, and Nucor Steel will manufacture the steel that will be used to make the girders. Okay, based on their schedules, all steel components expected to arrive by mid-January, and then the entire project looks like this. We will repair the concrete pier cap on the damaged section. We'll replace the bearings and expansion joints. We're going to erect a total of 7 new girders. And I know you've heard the term 4 girders was the last number we put out. And I think if you, yes. So and I know it's hard to see on this pack. This is just a shop drawing from one of our engineers, one of our folks working for us. There's actually 7 girders. And think of it like this. There were 3 long girders, 1, 2, 3, side by side, and then the 4th. Those 3 are basically 2 sections each. There's a splice field in there. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, if that makes any sense, okay? So 7 girders in total, measuring 556 feet in length. And then we're also going to, of course, be pouring a new concrete deck and the side or parapet walls. And it's going to be more than 7,600 square feet of deck to be replaced. So 556 feet of steel girders and more than 7,600 square feet of deck to be replaced. And of course, we will be installing the new sign truss. I think I failed to mention that sign truss did come down we took it down. It was removed during, right following the inspections once we were able to get up there. And the shoring towers, of course, have been installed to give us that stability. Okay, so I know what you all have been waiting. You've been sitting here very patiently for the last 15 minutes, waiting to hear what that timeline looks like. Construction is anticipated to begin in January. All work is expected to be completed in early March. Please, it is very important that you keep in mind that the schedule for completion will be contingent upon several factors. The delivery of materials, specifically those steel girders, as well as equipment, and the weather. We will be working during the winter months, and so we are beholden to Mother Nature. I think you all know that. We talk about it a lot in Southern Ohio. It's important to understand that every situation is unique and not every situation has a playbook. And by no means does the damage to this bridge and the repairs needed to reopen it have a playbook. So it's going to take time to get it restored to traffic. We are wholly committed to repairing the bridge in the safest manner possible as quickly as possible. Okay? So we're going to take questions at the end of the briefing, but now I'm going to turn the microphone back over to Matt, and he is going to walk you through a few more things. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So one thing I know we get questioned a lot about is, well, isn't this just like the Brent Spence Bridge fire back in 2020? It is very much not. In fact, when I was talking to our engineers who were involved in that incident as well, they basically told me there's really only two things that are similar between the two incidents. One, they were both bridges. Two, they both involved fires. Beyond that, very, very different. And, you know, for those of you who can see the screen here, there are a couple of the differences, the key differences between Brent Spence and the 471 incident. For those of you who obviously maybe are listening to this, I will highlight a couple of the key points being, you know, unlike 471, the stability of Brent Spence was never really an issue. So that meant they did not need shoring towers to get that work done. Removing the damaged sections of the bridge, a lot like a more typical demolition than obviously what we're dealing with here on 471. You know, this section of 471 was extremely unstable as a result of the fire. Several steel components, as Kathleen mentioned, had been completely separated from the concrete deck, and this made it really impossible to properly inspect that structure until all of that was stabilized. This bridge is uniquely built. Also, as Kathleen mentioned, there's no off-the-shelf items that we're going to be able to use. This is all having to be custom made. Brent Spence had steel that was, they're called stringer beams that are a little more standard and easier to obtain. They still had to be obtained and fabricated, and our partners at the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet did an amazing job getting that bridge reopened in 41 days. This is just not a standard bridge like that one. So there are a lot of differences that you will see between what happened on Brent Spence and what happened on 471 that certainly make this a longer timeline to get reopened. Again, everything very atypical on this one. This is just not a typical situation at all. So again, that timeline is going to be longer and the recovery time is going to be longer. Again, here's another look at the damage that we saw on the bridge here on 471. The next thing I want to talk to you about is we've gotten a lot of questions about a federal memo that came out from the Federal Highway Administration asking states to look for flammable materials being stored under bridges. This memo was actually in response to a fire under I-10 in Los Angeles back in 2023. You'll see behind me a Google Street View image. This is what was under that bridge in Los Angeles on I-10. You'll notice there are a lot of flammable materials like wood pallets, trash. There's a couple of abandoned vehicles in that image. Construction materials, all of that stacked up really close to the bottom of that bridge. That is what states were asked to address, and we did. Not only did we in response to that memo, but this image is actually under US 50 in Cincinnati. This was found by an ODOT crew and removed in 2018, so 5 years before the I-10 fire. You'll notice there are a lot of items in this picture that are similar to what you saw under I-10. We've got the wood pallets, there's some construction materials, trash. These things were removed by ODOT, and this isn't the only thing. We also found some propane tanks that were up against the Brent Spence Bridge. These were removed with the help of Cincinnati Fire very quickly, and we thank Cincinnati Fire for their quick reaction to help get that situation remedied. Another thing that we found, a spool of utility conduit and plastic pipes. These would be very similar to the items that were under the I-85 bridge in Atlanta that caught fire back in 2017. So again, we're looking for things that are obviously flammable, that are similar to things that were involved in previous fires. Abandoned semi-trailers under the Brent Spence Bridge here. Again, City of Cincinnati helped us very quickly get those removed, and we really appreciate their help on that. Last image here, this is actually a farm combine under I-75 in Butler County. Again, the biggest concern here would be how close that is to the bottom of that bridge, so that if something were to happen, that were to catch fire, that heat would be very close to those steel beams, and that was certainly a big concern for us. So again, able to get those items quickly removed. So that is something we've been doing for quite some time, not just in response to that federal memo in 2023. We've been very proactive. And of course, once that federal memo came out, we quickly sent that around to all 12 of our ODOT district bridge engineer, or all 12 of our ODOT districts with their bridge engineers, and said, hey, try to find us some things that are reactive to this memo. And again, I've highlighted some of those examples for you. Another question that we get a lot is, how much will this cost? And because this is an emergency project, we do not yet have a figure for that. That will be determined at the end of the process. Obviously, safe to estimate this is going to be in the millions of dollars. ODOT will foot the bill initially, and then thanks to Governor Mike DeWine's emergency declaration that was issued shortly after the fire, we will then be able to pursue federal reimbursements for those costs. So that is how an emergency project typically works, certainly how this one will work as well. The last question that we have been asked a lot is, well, what caused the fire? This is a question that I want to be very clear. Cincinnati Fire will answer. This is not a question for ODOT to answer. We are working on repairing the bridge and getting it reopened. At the same time, Cincinnati Fire is doing their investigation into the fire. We do not have a timetable. We have not heard a timetable from them. But what we do know is that we are confident that they are going to get this right. We're not in search of quick answers. We're in search of right answers. So certainly we are very interested in what they find in that investigation, and making sure that we get the right answers so we can understand at ODOT what exactly happened and what exactly burned under that bridge. It'll certainly help us to, how we do things going forward, as far as things we look for under bridges going forward. So that is all we have. We're certainly happy to answer any of your questions as we can. James.
Well, first on the cost,
Mm-hmm.
do you have and it might have been done differently because different states do differently, but in the Brent Spence situation, they allocated a certain amount. Do you have an allocation yet on the figure that you can go up to? Or are you just kind of running the bill and just?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding of it is we will get the project done, and whatever it costs to get the project done, that's the figure, and then we'll, of course, pursue that federal reimbursement.
Following up on the ODOT's efforts post I-10 memo, was there any ever red flags raised about the playground equipment and the mulch and the things underneath there at the playground?
So we've been asked that question, and we have looked through a lot of emails, documents from real estate, permit section. We have no records responsive to that that question that's been asked. We've even reached out to former ODOT employees who would have worked here at that time. And I know there's been a report that permission was granted by ODOT. Again, we have no records that would bear that out, so.
Just to follow up,
Mhm.
I guess I'm more saying that since your renewed efforts, you highlighted all the things you found. Did anybody say, hey, what about that equipment, or should we take a look at that, or anything like that?
No, I mean, the things that we were looking for were certainly very similar to what you saw under the I-10 bridge and the I-85 bridge in Atlanta. We were looking for like wood pallets, construction materials, propane tanks. I mean, all of those things were involved in those other fires. And so certainly we're looking for examples that would be similar to what had actually happened.
When you look at some of those pictures, and then you look at a picture of what this playground was, it actually looks like there was more fuel in the playground than in some of the stuff you guys actually removed. There was not a time when somebody came and said, maybe this is a situation, or an inspector said, this could present a problem.
Yeah, we've found nothing that says that happened. Now, certainly, again, we'll be interested in what Cincinnati Fire Department's investigation bears out. What exactly burned and how did it burn? That's going to be very interesting to us to be able to answer that question, for example.
That playground was the only thing you're aware of that was under there.
That's all we know at this point, yeah.
And you talked about the severe damage to this. Was that section of the bridge in danger of collapse at any point, and could it still collapse?
You want to take that one?
Sure. Thank you, Brian. Yes, I don't want to induce panic. I don't want anybody to worry. But yes, I mean, obviously, we didn't want to put crews on top of that to do any inspections or under it immediately after. We realized just how unstable it was. So yes, there was always the potential for it to collapse, and hence the shoring towers needed to be installed immediately so that we could, obviously we wanted to conduct those in-depth, up-close, hands-on inspections. We needed to gather as much information as we could about the damage to the bridge. We needed the shoring towers to enable our crews to be able to get there and get up close like they did afterward. And again, we still needed the additional shoring towers on the second span to the south of the ones that were installed, because again, we're going to be putting crews out there to do this demolition, and as they work on top, we want to make sure that the girders at the base, everything is still supported while they're up there working. So yes, I again don't want to induce panic, I don't want to induce fear, but we did have very significant concerns that bridge was in danger of collapsing.
But to be clear, you say the shoring towers.
It has stabilized. Yes, it has stabilized.
That's not a concern at this point.
No, it has alleviated the concern, but again, we do want to make sure that everybody is mindful that, and when we're working out there doing the demolition, obviously, the park, we're going to have some closures inside of the park area, because we're going to extend that perimeter of closure, because we don't want people in the area while they're doing demolition, just because something could fall. Again, that's what lends to that surgical procedure we're talking about, very methodical, step by step. I've watched bridge demolitions before. I'm talking about the Ohio River structures at Portsmouth and at Ironton. I was there when they were doing them. Completely different type of demolition plan in place here to make sure that the workers and everyone around is safe.
And as they start pulling this bridge apart and unraveling the issues there, is there still a danger that it could collapse?
I don't think that it is. I would have to ask one of our folks, but I think that, again, they realize that there are some unknowns, right? That how will the girders, how will the different parts of the bridge remain stable? Will they, and how they will remain stable during demolition? I mean, how will the structure respond, so to speak, when they start, when they bring in the excavators and bring in the equipment? And again, the demolition plan is calling for that to be very outlined with the contractors to know where to put the equipment. And one of the reasons too that we're keeping that, and we have to keep that northbound lane shut, not just because of the parapet wall that's been damaged on the northbound side, but also because we're going to be using equipment there potentially to help us with some of the demolition, because we want to be very careful about where the equipment is placed on that southbound structure. So again, I don't want to say that it is highly probable, but anything is possible, if that makes sense. We think we have diminish that concern significantly with the shoring towers, but we're going to be very careful. Our crews are going to be very, very careful because they don't want there to be even the least bit of a threat of any part of this bridge, whether it's just parts of the girders or parts of the deck collapsing.
Now, the steel beams and the girders, are they all coming from that same old tree?
Yes, yes. Mhm.
What was the discussion there? Like, was it important for you guys to make sure that the steel was produced domestically? Were there talks about shipping it in from, I mean,
So
what were those
really, a lot of it was timeline. Who can get us the girders? How quickly can you get them, right? And of course, they're going to have to meet specifications. They'll be tested. They'll be fully tested before we do any install, which is a part of our process for, when we do inspections and we do testing on the materials. It was really important to try and find a fabricator, somebody that could get these materials to us as quickly as possible in a very timely manner. Again, we were hearing from different fabricators from around the country that said, we're sorry, we can't help you until next summer because we are backlogged. We've got to get X, Y, and Z for this agency, this state, this organization, this company. So there's a lot of backlog out there. So again, they were reaching out, phone calls. A lot of phone calls were being made in a 2-week time period, and just picking up the phone. The contractors were constantly on the phone with people and sending out, there were some emails back and forth, I'm sure, and saying, who can do this, and how quickly can you get it to us?
And because they can get it to you so quickly, how is that impacting the budget? I know that we don't have
It actually,
a number right now,
no, but actually, it likely won't impact the budget, and that there isn't going to really be a significant difference or anything like that. And honestly, I think a lot of the contractors, the fabricators that they've been working with, really want to help. They know the impact this is having. They understand it, and it just so happens that it's coming from Kentucky. That Stoop could get this to us quickly. But we weren't necessarily focused on a particular region. We were talking to fabricators in Ohio. I know far as away as California even, that they were just basically who can do what for us and when.
You said that the area, I know I was just this yesterday, total area of the deck is 7,600 square feet. Do you have the
Little-
dimensions of what the hole is, how long, how wide?
We can get that for you. I don't have it offhand. It's a great question, and I'm sorry. I should have thought to ask that before coming in here today. But
At some point, is this gonna look like a bone fish up there? Is that
I
what we're gonna
yeah,
see?
eventually when the concrete deck comes off, and again, it won't come off in huge, it'll start off kind of smaller pieces, because they will offload that and then they'll haul the materials away. So eventually, yes, you're gonna see basically kind of a skeletal type of structure up there.
On the issue of recreational infrastructure underneath bridges, have you begun to look for playgrounds, parks, any other type of infrastructure under Ohio bridges or overpasses? Have you identified any others, and is there plans to mitigate that?
Certainly, when you have a situation occur, and certainly one that I'm not aware of any situation in the world where a playground has caught fire and damaged a bridge. Certainly not to this extent. So yes, absolutely, we would tell our folks and have been telling our folks, like, okay, this happened in Cincinnati. Let's look elsewhere. We've been looking for these things. Now let's look for these. To my knowledge, we have not found anything else. This is pretty unique to this location.
Are there other lessons you guys might have taken out of this? Thinking about custom-made materials.
Sure.
Does it make more sense for interchangeable materials? Are there any, or is it too soon to learn lessons?
I think it's probably a little too soon to learn, but at the same time, why they decided to go with this design in 1976 when they built this bridge, I wasn't around then, so I don't know. But certainly they must have had a reason back then. But certainly I think it's a good point, going forward.
It is a unique design, as we've pointed out repeatedly. It is not like other bridges. So again, that's why we have to have custom-made parts for it. And again, I might have been around, but I was not working for ODOT at the time, of course, in 1976 or at that time frame. So we don't know those answers to that. And we could certainly, explore that as to that. But we're not, building bridges. I can tell you that, and again, if we want to talk about my history and my experience from working in District 9, we have two Ohio River crossings that ODOT fully operates, owns, and maintains in the state of Ohio, and those are both out of District 9, one at Portsmouth and one at Ironton. Those bridges that we replaced were built in the 1920s by the Ohio Bridge Commission, and they were the typical type of structures that would have been built then. And so then we replaced them with cable stayed bridges, which was typical for what we were doing during that time period. So, this is, for whatever reason, this is fabricated the way it was. We don't know.
We got a new
But-
one coming up here pretty soon, so, I mean, anything we might translate
I,
that might be relatable to a new bridge that, would be.
Yeah.
it's, you want to take that, or
I
shall I?
mean,
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
I'll just say that, I've had a lot of people ask, well, it's been a couple years, why haven't we seen construction on the new Brent Spence? There's been a lot of design still going on. I mean, there's a
They're
lot
working on
of
it.
design going on with that bridge. Will they look at something like that? I don't know, Brian, but, I can say even with the fabrication that they're going to do with these girders that will be replacing on 471, there is obviously some engineering that's taking place that, well, we've learned some things since 1976, some different designs that they can, some different standards that they can employ with this one, these replacement girders that might help us to speed up the process and also be a little more standard potentially. So, yeah, it's all part of the conversation.
You guys mentioned the challenges with obtaining the material. You guys have a manufacturer for the beams and the girder. Do you guys have a timeline in terms of how quick you need to have that material to be ready for that March 2025? What's the timeline there?
Yeah, I mean, mid-January is the delivery time for that to get here to Cincinnati. So that's all been built into the schedule. We've worked it out with the manufacturer and the fabricator. That was the date they said we can commit to getting it to Cincinnati on this date. And certainly that was the component we needed to build the timeline. I know you guys have been asking for that timeline a lot, and we've been saying, well, we just don't know yet, and that's the reason. Until we knew when those materials would be here in Cincinnati to be put up, it was really hard to say, well, here's when we're going to get it done. Now that we know steel will be here in mid-January, that has helped us to be able to formulate the timeline.
And I do want to add to that too, is that, when we say early March, we're looking, and again, this is if everything comes together, the plan comes together. We are hopeful, very hopeful, that it is a 6 to 8 week timeline for construction. So we're looking, that's why we're saying early March. But that's if everything falls into place appropriately and accordingly to the schedule. Anything can happen. So we do want to we want to prepare people that there's always the chance for delay. And we will be watching that, tracking that. We'll let everyone know. Trust me, this isn't the end of our conversations, and I'm sure I'm going to be talking to all of you again over the next few months and as we go through this. And I will let you know. We'll make sure that you know if there are any delays to the schedule, if anything has happened with the fabrication, if there's a holdup for any reason. We're going to be doing a lot of tracking on this, obviously from our end, not just the construction side.
Yeah, and to add to that, I mean, I know, we try really hard to communicate as many details as we can. That first week after the fire, we were putting out 2 updates a day, both on our website, which is transportation.ohio.gov/471fire. We were also emailing all of those updates out to the list, and you can subscribe to that list. If you haven't, I would encourage you to do that at that website that I just gave you. We've since peeled back to sort of a daily update that usually goes out around 4 o'clock. We'll continue that. Obviously, as we get into situations where there's not a lot of new information to update, we may back off of a daily update, but certainly we will be posting every update we can post, every piece of information we can get, we want to share with everyone. So we'll be posting it on that website, transportation.ohio.gov/471fire, and we'll be emailing it. And I know all of you in the media get those emails. I hope as many people in the public that want to get those will sign up for those. We obviously also publish that on our social media, Facebook, X. So we want to get the information out to people as much as possible and keep everybody informed.
Last thing, you mentioned that a project of this magnitude up until this point would have taken originally 3 years, and it's taken 3 weeks. Can you just expand on that, on how that was possible and why, you did it quick, but it's still efficient?
Yeah, I mean, when you think about, the public usually sees a groundbreaking, maybe a ceremonial groundbreaking, maybe they hear about it in the press release, hey, construction is going to begin on this project, and then you immediately start seeing equipment moving out there on that site, and then the project's done. I mean, that's the part that the public sees, right? What you don't see is all of the stuff that happens in the offices here at ODOT and at the contractor. Before it even goes out to bid for a contractor to build, there's a lot of work. All of that is done on the front end, and it's all part of the built-in schedule for us. We're kind of seeing it play out with Brent Spence, for example, the Brent Spence Bridge Corridor project. You guys are seeing that lead time, right? We got the grant. Now we're in the design phase. You guys are seeing the process. This is another situation where you're seeing the process. But the public typically doesn't see that with the project. So that's what we're talking about, that 3 years. There's a lot of work that happens before you get the first press release from Kathleen saying, here's construction kickoff, we're going to start this project at this point, and equipment starts working. So yeah, we've had to compress a lot because obviously you can't plan for a bridge fire. So, you know, it's one of those things where they've done a lot of work around the clock with a lot of people.
Right, and I was
Anything
just going
not
to say,
getting done that would normally have gotten done because of this?
no, we're still, you know, I can tell you that our project manager for ODOT that is working on this job, as well as our contractors who Great Lakes Construction, they have multiple jobs. I mean, Chris Tuminello, and I don't know if he's going to probably kill me for mentioning his name, but Chris is also managing our I-74-75 Mill Creek Expressway 5B project right now. He still heads that up. Everything is still working. I mean, Great Lakes is still out there working on that. They're still, they're getting ready to start the I-75 bridge replacement, the railroad bridge replacement project over I-75 here soon. They're still working on the Norwood Lateral. We've got them contracted with 3 of our bigger jobs here in Hamilton County. They are still working. So nothing is not getting done because of this, but we are just, again, and it goes to what we said earlier, round the clock. I mean, I can tell you these guys are losing sleep over this, and it's every day, 7 days a week. Typically, when we design projects, you know, it's your typical, you know, we say what, the 9 to 5, the 8 to 4 type of work. You come into the office and you work your day, and then you go home, and you have your weekends off, and that's your typical traditional way to design a project, not this, where it's all hands on deck.
And Brian, to that point, I will also add, you know, obviously the convenience would be to get this open immediately, right? I mean, as quickly as we can. We will never sacrifice safety for convenience, ever. So there will be no corners cut. It will be a matter of just getting it done differently, quicker, with more people potentially. But everything about this bridge replacement or this bridge repair project will be done safely and with safety as the #1 factor for everything we do.
Could you send that deck out?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, happy to do that.
And then, as a follow-up, you talked about keeping the public informed. Any chance of like putting up a live webcam or something like that?
We've definitely talked about, yeah.
Follow along.
Yeah, we've absolutely talked about that. That is something that we've had some pretty intense conversations about, like where would we put it, when would we put it. Obviously, there's going to be a period of time that the public is probably going to see not a lot going on because we will have completed the demolition, and then we're waiting for the material. So that has been part of the conversation of the when do we put the camera up. So yes, that is certainly all part of the conversation. And in addition to something like that, obviously we will be posting a lot of photos, videos that we shoot. Obviously you guys will be, I'm sure, down there quite often, updating folks on the progress as well.
So, right, with the schedule, and we know demolition starts first. We start that Friday, day after Thanksgiving. They're going to hit the ground running with that. And of course, that'll take 2 to 3 weeks. So through December, you'll start seeing, you'll see a lot of activity still going on. And obviously, 471 northbound, that parapet wall that has to, 70-foot section of that has to be repaired before we can open up that lane of traffic on 471. Again, that's northbound. I want to make sure that everybody understands out in the public that we're not talking about southbound at that point in December. So you'll see a lot of activity, but toward the end of December, you may not see as much happening, and it isn't because people won't be working. It's just we are kind of in a holding pattern and we're waiting. There will be doing the initial repair work on the pier cap that has to be repaired. Again, weather, that is going to be a significant factor for us going into January, cold weather months, precipitation. But we'll let everyone know. We will certainly keep everybody informed. And again, those daily updates to say, hey, maybe this isn't, you're not seeing anything happening out, in full view at the site, but we can tell you about what's going on behind the scenes.
Some of the downtime
The
built
downtime.
into that.
Right, and we had no choice, right. We have no choice with the downtime because we will be waiting on those steel girders to arrive.
And another part of the timeline that we really can't shorten is once they pour that concrete deck, it has to cure. I know you guys had talked about the foundations, that had to cure for 72 hours for the shoring towers. There will be a cure period for that deck. I don't know what that is off the top of my head, but there will be a period where it's just, you're waiting for that concrete to strengthen and cure.
They'll
Yeah.
probably likely, and I don't want to speak out of turn, I want to be careful on this. Again, we'll follow up, give you all the details as they're playing out. I'll be happy to answer questions all the time, anytime. I think I've been pretty good about trying to be responsive to you and trying not to miss calls. I apologize when I do miss them. But probably the deck will be, a couple of concrete pours, and you have to wait for each cure time. You have to give it a certain amount. You have to come back and test after you do a pour to make sure that it meets all of the measurements for that. And so then you come back in and do a second one. So those times have to be built into that construction schedule after the girders are actually installed.
Will there be any other traffic impacts while you guys do these repairs? Pete Rose Way, is it closed in?
So potentially, especially during demolition, yes, potentially there will be, but I think we're looking at just single lane closures, not a full closure. And that would be to get the equipment in there, to bring trucks in to deliver materials when they're delivering the girders, that type of thing. So there would be limited traffic impacts. We're going to try and keep those to a minimum on Pete Rose Way and Riverside, but there will be the potential for that. And obviously, when we're doing demolition, Sawyer Point Park, there will be some additional closures and restrictions, and we will make sure everybody knows that as soon as we have a schedule for the restrictions.
And I will also add, just, Cincinnati Parks has been wonderful to work with on this. I mean, they've been very accommodating, understanding, really given us access to wherever we need for crews. So we really appreciate both Cincy Parks and the city for their great cooperation on this. Anything else?
You all have been very detailed on the
Mhm.
process, and one, I just want to say thanks for the transparency and
Sure.
responsiveness throughout the whole situation. Still knowing how vital that crossing is going to be, there's going to be naysayers that say 3 months is just not fast enough. In your experience, could you just share and kind of sum up the complexity of the project before you?
Yeah, I mean, there's just a couple of things that no matter how much time we can shave off a process like a design, I mean, there's just, getting the materials is really the driver of this timeline. You can only do what you can do. There's a couple things we can't control: the weather, and we can't control those supplies chains. It's going to take as much time as it takes to manufacture the custom-made steel parts and get them fabricated and then get them to Cincinnati. I think it's incredible that they've been able to do this on the timeline they've been able to do it. I again, fully understand the inconvenience and the frustration for people who have been sitting in traffic trying to get home in the evenings. I get that. That is, we're frustrated by it too, but the project is going to take as long as it's going to take, and we're doing everything to get it done quickly. And again, to take a project that would normally take 3 years and reduce it down to just a couple of months, I think is a monumental task.
Right, and again, I understand the frustration of the motorists, trust me. And if I could have it any other way, and I could have this open today, I would, but I can't, and none of us can. And I think everybody has to understand that these things, we want it done right. We can't just retrofit with off-the-shelf parts and pieces. They don't exist. It wouldn't work. And so we have to get it done right. We are, we're beholden to the fabricators, and they have been really good to work with us and have been saying, we will do what we can. They have. But again, there's a backlog, and other companies couldn't, when they're telling us, we were hearing late summer, from some of them before they could even ship the girders to us to get those parts manufactured. We found a company, and we were talking to a lot of different ones, and some were saying, okay, it's maybe this and maybe that, and so basically we just had to hit it hard. They hit it really hard with all of them. A lot of phone calls, a lot of discussions, and everybody was, they're being really cooperative. But there's really not much more that we can do. And I think that, just it's patience. I can tell you that, yes, I have been in those situations where I've seen our projects They seem like they're taking forever to get done. They seem, I see that with traditional build projects, excuse me, but even in emergencies, and people are wondering, why is it taking so long? Well, there usually is a reason, and it's not for the lack of trying and the lack of work. We are working, but, and again, we keep going back to not just the timeline to receive those materials, but also the weather. I mean, we have to, fingers crossed, everybody, we have to really hope and pray for a mild winter and that we don't get slammed with any severe weather that would stop work from happening. Pouring concrete is going to be weather sensitive. It's weather contingent for us. And so, when those girders get installed, that's going to be the next thing, is to get the, they'll have the bearings in place and the expansion joints, they'll have everything ready to go, but will the weather be cooperative? And we can't answer that question today, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, we appreciate everybody's patience, and if you're, I think that, we're talking with Cincinnati. We've also been talking, of course, with Newport and Covington, the tri-state area, with the locals concerning those traffic impacts. They have made adjustments to signal timing. They continue to watch those things. The signal timings are probably as adjusted as best they can, given the amount of traffic that has been displaced from this structure. We're looking at an excess of around 100,000, 105,000 motorists who use southbound I-471 that have been displaced, and they're using other routes. And obviously, Taylor Southgate is picking up a lot of that traffic, because when you think about where it connects back down in Kentucky on the Newport side, getting there off of, closer to I-471, a lot of people are using that. So Clay Wade Bailey, we were hearing earlier from the city of Cincinnati, underutilized right now. But because people, obviously if I-471 is the bridge or the route of choice, they want to get the quickest access to that, but they may end up sitting in traffic. So the city of Cincinnati, and as well as Kentucky, our partners in Kentucky at Newport and Covington, everyone understands the traffic impacts. We are working on some additional traffic plans, so to speak. We're trying to figure out ways to help, and we've been using a DriveWise system that puts in messaging into the cabs of truck drivers, so they know 471 is closed, and we're messaging to them to use 275 if they're traveling south on both 71 or 75, I-75 or I-71, to use I-275 if they're not making any deliveries or stopping within the outer belt. We're also using our own digital message signs. We're trying to put the word out as much as we can to people that are not planning to stop inside of that outer belt. If you're through traffic motorist and you are not planning to stop anywhere within that tri-state area, then you need to try and take 275. And we're trying to move more motorists over there. It is difficult, though, because we are either creatures of habit, or we're going to use what GPS tells us is the shortest route, and GPS may not always be, depending on which system you have, may not be giving you the best information as far as your timeline or your travel time. So I don't know if you have anything else to add on that, but we just ask for everyone's patience. We are doing what we can, but I think the timeline is pretty phenomenal, given pretty aggressive and pretty phenomenal, given the amount of damage and the amount of work that has to be completed to get this reopened.
Anything else? Great. Thanks for coming, guys. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate
Really
it.
appreciate it.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.